Good morning and welcome to day 2 of Future Decoded. There's a lot of optimism and excitement right now around artificial intelligence. But there's also a lot of fear and a lot of scaremongering. So which of these should we believe? What is really going on at the heart of the AI revolution? Well, first of all, there really is a revolution taking place right now. But it's perhaps not what you think. Let me show you. 40 years ago, there was a revolution in the way we build computers. It was called photolithography. It allows us to print entire computers in one go on a silicon wafer. Since that time, there has been exponential growth in the number of transistors we can pack onto a silicon chip. It's called Moore's Law, and it's driven the digital revolution. It's why Microsoft exists. It is why you have a supercomputer right now in your pocket. Well, today there's another revolution which I believe could be just as profound. This time it's a revolution in the way we create software. For most of the last few decades, we've built software in a way that I would call handcrafted. A developer tells the computer what to do step by step in order to achieve the desired outcome. With AI, we have a radically different approach to creating software. Instead of telling the computer what to do, we write very different software. We tell the computer how to learn, and then we teach it using data. This is the technology known as machine learning, and it's a complete transformation in the way that we create solutions. Now, the company IDC has observed that the amount of data in the world is growing exponentially. In fact, it's doubling about every couple of years. This really is the new Moore's Law. It's a Moore's Law of data. So the AI revolution is really a revolution in machine learning. Today, I'm going to talk about the opportunities for data to make a real difference in the world. It can literally transform every aspect of our lives. For example, imagine being able to reprogram living cells to increase food production or to help tackle climate change. Imagine being able to deliver personalized healthcare tuned to you as an individual. Imagine being able to extract knowledge and information from health data while at the same time keeping it private and secure. Now, all of these things are feasible. In fact, they're all being researched right now at the Microsoft Research Lab up in Cambridge. And I'll show you some more examples as we go through. But there are also risks. For example, in this data-driven world, we risk that the technology will take the biases which are often present in data and amplify them hugely. We need to be grounded in trust. In fact, Mitra Azizirod later today will talk about responsible AI. But there's another big risk with AI, and it's one that I think is not often discussed. If we focus too much on the fear and the pessimism and the risks, we risk turning our backs on this technology. The failure to capture data and to use that data will literally cost lives. In fact, it may even be unethical not to deploy this technology in many cases. Now, what do I mean when I say data can save lives? That sounds like a strong statement. Well, let me show you an example. And this example goes back to the 1850s. Now, at that time, there was a very bad outbreak of cholera in London. And a physician called John Snow decided to investigate the causes of cholera. Nobody really knew whether it was something in the water, something in the air, something in the food. It was really a bit of a mystery. So he did the following. He took all of the cholera outbreaks in Soho for a particular period, and he plotted them on a map, one dot at the location of every cholera death. And this is what he saw. He saw clusters, but what he saw in particular was a very large cluster centered on the water pump in Broad Street. Now, he then arranged for the handle to be removed from that water pump, and the incidence of cholera in that region of London declined significantly. But actually, the real contribution that he made was that he founded the field of epidemiology, and that field is saving countless lives even today. Well, that was a few hundred data points plotted by hand on a map. Now imagine what we can do with this exponential growth in digital data. In fact, today, I'm going to focus on applications of AI in the domain of healthcare and life sciences. Yesterday, Microsoft announced a major multi-year strategic AI alliance with Novartis. Our goal is to leverage data and AI to develop new medicines, to develop them faster and more cost-effectively to help people around the world. Now, in addition to directly empowering all Novartis employees with the power of AI, Microsoft Research is going to be collaborating with Novartis, in particular with their life science experts, to explore transformational initiatives in a variety of areas. In particular, we're going to be looking at the way a data-driven approach can help us to design new drugs and new therapies. We'll be looking at research into personalized medicine for acute leukemia, and we're looking at new treatments for macular degeneration. And so I want to look at that last example in a little bit more detail. So this so-called age-related macular degeneration is actually the #1 leading cause of irreversible blindness in developed countries. It's estimated that by next year, there'll be around 196 million people affected by this disease. So we're going to explore, in partnership with Novartis, new treatments that combine machine learning with novel drugs. But it's not just our physical well-being that can be helped by data. Mental health is equally as important. Now, mental health historically has been a rather stigmatized topic, but fortunately today, that taboo is really being lifted. In fact, it's rare that you'll not be either affected yourself or you'll have family or friends or loved ones who are affected by mental health issues. In fact, in any given year, 1 in 4 of us will be affected by a diagnosable mental health condition. Now, I'm delighted to announce today that Microsoft has just entered into a new research collaboration with the global leader in digital mental health delivery. It's a remarkable company called Silver Cloud Health. Together, we're going to be exploring the use of AI and machine learning to deliver personalized mental health interventions. The goal, ultimately, is to make lives better for those who are suffering from challenges such as depression, anxiety, and stress. So it's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage Ken Cahill, who is the Chief Executive of Silver Cloud Health. Please join me. Ken, thank you for coming over to join us. So,
thank you for the opportunity.
Should we start by just having you tell us a little bit about what is Silver Cloud?
Yeah, certainly. Good morning, everyone. Silver Cloud is a digital mental health platform, so it enables earlier, easier access to essentially a digitized version of what you would do within face-to-face therapy. Silver Cloud comes from over a decade of research into the area, essentially looking at how can we deliver access to tools and techniques, how can we deliver these access and ensure that they're effective in terms of engagement, in terms of dropout rates and clinical outcomes as well as a core part of what we do. We spun out from that research in 2012 as a true mental health platform, not just a tool or an app in the space. We've over 30 programs across the range of acuity, from your kind of minimum or mild challenges around well-being, work-life balance, resilience, through to full interventional programs for challenges around depression and anxiety, as you mentioned, and then also looking at the comorbidity, the coexistence between chronic disease and also mental health challenges that would exist there as well. We deliver the platform now to about 300,000 users almost. We kind of use the term clients more typically than patients. right the way across the spectrum in terms of minimal, mild, all the way into more severe and enduring mental illness. And proud to say, one of the kind of core parts, our North Star, is really around outcomes. And we've about, on average across the 300,000 users, we would see 65% of those users would achieve what would be classified as a significant clinical improvement on the platform.
Great. And Silver Cloud isn't a pure digital solution, as it involves humans in the loop. Can you say a little bit about how the platform actually works?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the core parts of Silver Cloud is to use this kind of concept or idea called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. If anyone has been to therapy, it probably was the standard that therapist would have used. So we're digitizing that, delivering it online and making it effective in terms of delivery. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, as it sounds, is focused on kind of two core parts. The cognitive part, which is sort of how you think, and the behavioral part, which is kind of how you do, or things that you do. And looking at then how that links together with this concept of your thoughts, your feelings, and then your behaviors, and how they're linked together in a cycle. If I think of a very simple example, the trigger is I burn the dinner. That's the trigger. The thinking then from that is I think bad things. From that then what will happen is I then sort of step into the feelings, which is I feel worthless or inadequate, and then the behavior that reacts from that is that basically I snap at my family or my wife or my children, or indeed I sort of feel and withdraw from that particular situation. It's a very simple example, but as you can imagine, that scales up through bereavement, challenge around depression, anxiety, the whole way up in terms of the spectrum that is there. And Silver Cloud is a toolkit. It's really designed to help somebody break that kind of cycle of thinking that's there in terms of delivery. You mentioned about the user journey. So what we have built into Silver Cloud, the unique part of the research that we have done, is ensuring that there is a human in the loop helping to guide you through. Focused really around kind of the core part of keeping you engaged in the program and the structures. Over your kind of 8-10 week program, they're guiding you through, they're sort of providing you with short, positive, motivational feedback to keep you engaged in terms of delivery. And the core concept is that what Silver Cloud is a clinician extender, not a clinician replacer as well. So
Microsoft, I mean, we're totally delighted by this collaboration, but from your point of view, why did you want to collaborate with Microsoft?
I think there was kind of two parts for me. Obviously honored to be here representing the great teams at both Microsoft and indeed at Silver Cloud. But for me, the kind of core concepts were two things. One was impact. So a sort of shared ethos and focus on impact and outcomes was number one. And the second part, joint position, was focused on ensuring that responsibility around machine learning, responsibility around AI. Ensuring what we're delivering is, always going to do good and is delivered in a very transparent way in terms of privacy and security. So I think those together in a true collaborative form that we've worked on is one of the big reasons.
Great. And it's early days, of course, but we've already started to think about some of the ways in which we might use machine learning and with this tremendous opportunity that we have together. Some of the thoughts that we've been having initially concern the idea of stratification, the idea that given a very large cohort of users, we can start to use machine learning to look for patterns, for groups of people who might respond in similar ways within a group to a particular intervention. And therefore really take the first steps towards true personalization in this very data-driven way. And one of the phrases I sometimes use is the paradox of personalization. So from a machine learning point of view, to deliver technology that's tuned to you as an individual, the best way to do that is to look at data from a very large cohort.
Yeah.
And of course,
no, sorry, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's that personalization of delivery is key. I think if you deliver generic content to a generic population, the difficulty that you'll have there is low engagement, high dropout, and resulting in poor clinical improvement, and that's not what we want to do. So if you picture back and take everything back to sort of the real world in terms of sort of traditional face-to-face therapy sessions, your therapist is guiding you through a path, but that path is kind of ever-changing in terms of content or particular examples or tools or techniques that you can use to improve and break the kind of the concept of some of the negative thinking styles.
Yes. So I mean, looking down our list here, the goal with this personalization is, of course, to make predictions and then to make actual interventions. And tell us a little bit about the interventions and what we're looking for there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're delivering in terms of interventions will span, as I said, the acuity spectrum in terms of delivery. So we want to deliver something that is on time, in context, on demand, and is essentially, as one of the users on the platform coined before, this is really about therapy in the 21st century, about getting easier, earlier access, but not to something inferior. This is about easier, earlier access to something that is designed about outcomes in terms of delivery. And for both of us and for both of our teams, that's what we're here for. For Microsoft and for Silvercloud, it's about improving people's lives and focusing them on the outcomes.
Absolutely. Ken, it's been fantastic to watch you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So we've seen some very inspiring examples of the power of AI to make a difference. The AI revolution is real, but at its heart, it's really a revolution in how we create technology by leveraging the power of data and machine learning. I'm fundamentally a technology optimist. Yes, there are risks. Yes, there are challenges. But I firmly believe that we are at a moment of extraordinary opportunity to improve healthcare, to save lives, and to make the world a better place. So I'm now going to share with you another example of really a very inspiring story about how we can leverage the power of data and AI to improve healthcare. And to tell you about this, it's my pleasure to welcome the Chief Executive of the British Heart Foundation, Simon Gillespie.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a very great pleasure to be here today. As I've been introduced, I'm Simon Gillespie. I'm the Chief Executive of the British Heart Foundation. What I want to talk to you about today is a bit of history, but also a forward look. In 1961, and in the decade before that, about a half of all deaths in the UK each year were caused by heart and circulatory diseases. So heart attack, stroke, vascular dementia, and other related conditions, in all amounting 50-plus conditions across that space. Now, as you can probably see, life was pretty tough in 1961. Some of you weren't around then to remember it. I was 2. They did actually have sheets on the beds in the hospitals in those days. But in 1961, if you had a heart attack, and many tens of thousands of people did each year, your chances of survival were only 3 out of 10. So in this room today, you made it. Unfortunately, you didn't. And this was exactly the type of motivation behind a group of doctors, a group of clinicians deciding that they needed to do something about this. There was an epidemic of heart and circulatory disease, and they were not going to put up with it. And they had the vision and the insight, and indeed the energy, to set up a new charity called the British Heart Foundation. And the premise of this was that you could find the solutions to the problems that were killing 1 in 2 of the British population each year, and in fact 1 in 2 of the population right across the world. You could find the solutions to those problems through research. And they moved on from that. And in 1964, the British Heart Foundation made its first research grant. And since 1964, the BHF has invested over £1 billion in life-saving, world-class, world-leading heart and circulatory disease. And that has transformed the picture, not just here in the UK, but globally too. If you look at some of the introductions of that research into practice and the difference that's made here in the UK alone, from that statistic I gave you earlier on, only about 3 out of 10 people surviving a heart attack to discharge from hospital, that figure is now 7 out of 10 and continuing to improve. So instead of you were the unlucky ones, actually you're now part of a much bigger group of people who are the lucky ones, who get to go home from hospital and have more time with their families. We have also transformed the agenda in a number of other different ways. So there are about 12 children born each day in the UK with a significant congenital heart defect. Nothing that they, of course, as newborns could have done about it. It's only a few decades ago that 8 out of 10 of them would not have survived through to their second birthday. Now the vast majority not just survive, but also thrive through into adolescence and into adult life as well. But there's still a lot more that we need to do because many of them will have complex interrelated medical conditions. Now, I'm here to talk to you about what it means to us to be in partnership with Microsoft. We are not just improving as an organization in our own internal agenda, but of course doing that on an external-facing position as well. We're here for everyone with a heart, everyone in this room, all of the 66, 67 million people right across the UK, whether they currently have heart disease and circulatory disease or not. Because in all probability, you will at some stage go on to develop something that causes a problem. But of course, you will know somebody as well that has that problem as well. So now let's look at what it means to us internally, building a collaborative and modern workplace. And let me just put this into context. We have as many employees, paid staff from the British Heart Foundation, as the capacity of this room, about 4,500 people, backed up by 19,000 volunteers working in over 850 different locations right across the UK. So we've introduced Office 365 to build the collaborative power of the organisation, to enable us, all separate bits of the organisation, to relate to each other in ways that we've never achieved before with that dispersal, and taking into account all of the various different specialisms we have within our organisation as well. We've got 1.1 million documents on SharePoint. We're undertaking thousands now, in the last month alone, thousands of teamwork calls between us as we grow and develop our collaboration and our insight. And it's really important for us that that will continue. And as we roll out Office 365 still further, it really is a question of the more you look, the more you find. We want to make sure that we're enabling innovation to occur. We have 1.3 million people every month visiting our website. Now, in some of the organizations here, you might think that's relatively small. It's actually pretty big for a charity website, coming to us for all sorts of different things. How can we make our website more flexible, more reliable, and also, in these times, more secure as well? So this is why we're really pleased to be looking at Azure Web Hosting, to make sure we can provide all of those facilities and enable that development to provide better services to our customers. And our customers come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. They could be somebody wanting information about a diagnosis that they've just had. They could be somebody coming to us wanting to arrange a furniture collection because they want to donate us their second-hand furniture in order for us to sell and raise money. And that takes me on to a third element for us. We're the largest charity retail organisation in the country, and depending on the exchange rate, either the largest or the second largest in the world as well. When I was applying for this role, I didn't quite realise, although clearly it's there in the accounts, that I was taking on the largest furniture retailer by numbers of stores in the UK. I thought that I would be heading up a medical research funding charity that then wants to bring those things into play through healthcare innovation. But how we reimagine retail in rapidly changing times, in the sorts of situations that we have on the high street and elsewhere, with 750 different shops, with those large numbers of staff supported by the majority of our volunteers, with tens of thousands of transactions a day, with nearly 500,000 turnover a day. How do we make that make sense? How can we extract all the information from that, but also, of course, deliver to our customers, both those people generous enough to give us the stock in the first place, but also the people that walk through the doors of one of our shops or access our eBay site as well. And reimagining that through dynamics is fundamentally important to us. We want to make sure that we transform business outcomes. And how do we do that? Well, firstly, we are very much in the position of using artificial intelligence to transform what we do as an organization. We have a data scientist. We use data scientist services elsewhere. can we make sure that we're making maximum possible use of the information that we have available to you? And like most organizations, it's a vast amount, but do that in a way which is sensible and delivers good business outcomes. We have established the British Heart Foundation Cardiovascular Disease Data Science Centre. For one reason or other, I only say that once a day. It's a bit of a mouthful. But today we announced the appointment of its first director, Professor Cathy Sudlow. And Cathy is a stroke specialist and neurologist who currently is the medical and scientific lead for UK Biobank. This is a £10 million investment by the British Heart Foundation to bring together and have access to the huge amount of data that is out there in the real world about heart and circulatory disease, the research outcomes, patient information, properly protected for its confidentiality, of course, and how we can bring all of those together and then enable and educate the research and clinical communities to make sure they're making best and optimum use of that information in their various roles as well. This, for us, a £10 million investment, is a pretty clear statement of where we see the future and where we see the future of making a difference and making an impact as well. But it's not just important to us that we do good things. How we do them is also fundamentally important. We know some of the issues about getting girls and young women into careers in science, technology, engineering, and maths. We recognize also the talent that is out there in those groupings, but also in more generally in underrepresented groups as well. And we're proud to be working in partnership with Microsoft and others to really promote the importance of bringing girls and young women into the workplace in science and technology subjects. And this is important for us as an organization to make sure that we can make best use of skills and talents, but it's also something we work on in terms of the broader research and clinical communities as well. We want to reach out to people, and particularly to girls and young women. And so therefore we're working with Cancer Research UK and with Microsoft in an outreach program to schools. And the first of those events will take place in Kent next week. But underpinning this is our determination to do the right thing. Doing things right is great. Doing the right things is also important. And we're proud signatories of the Tech Talent Charter, again with Cancer Research UK and with Microsoft, arranging a series of events to bring people into organizations such as ourselves and show the real difference that you can make if you undertake a career in technology. You can transform people's lives. So where does that leave us now? It leaves us in an organization which is far better connected but still has a long way to go internally. It leaves us with an environment out there in the research and clinical communities which are beginning to connect up, and we can do more to encourage that collaboration. And as we look ahead to 2030, we've set ourselves a series of very ambitious goals of what we want the world to look like. Now, I'm going to give you one example of that because this is where the issue of what we're talking about and partnership working with Microsoft and others comes to a very, very sharp edge around survival. Now, you may have wondered what this funny orange package I brought onto the stage with me was. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but this is a portable, automated defibrillator. It is a heart restarter. And if you are one of the 30,000 people in the UK each year who have a cardiac arrest, which is when your heart stops beating, if you have a cardiac arrest, you're dependent on a thing called the chain of survival. That is somebody close to you, because you won't be able to do anything yourself, you'll be unconscious, somebody close to you raising the alarm, shouting for help, dialing 999, starting CPR, and then sending somebody to get one of these. Most important thing about this is you don't have to be a trained clinician to use it. They are designed to be used by members of the public, by you and me, somebody without any clinical training at all. 30 years ago, the British Heart Foundation awarded a research grant to develop the first out-of-hospital defibrillator. And a guy called Professor Frank Pantridge in Belfast had this idea, applied for a grant from us. And in those days, they took a hospital defibrillator, put it in the back of an ambulance, wired it up to 2 car batteries, and then they had to be blue lighted out to where the emergency occurred. And ideally, they will be able to reverse the ambulance out and then essentially get 2 big jump leads to put onto the patient. It's nothing like that these days. These things, when you open them up, do not be scared of them. Open them up, switch them on. They talk to you and tell you what to do. You can do no harm with one of these. But there is a big difficulty. 100,000 or so of these have been sold into addresses in the UK. The ambulance service know, or the ambulance services across the UK know where about 35,000 to 40,000 of them are. So what's happened to the other 60,000? And can we be sure that the information the ambulance services have on the 35 to 40,000 they know about is actually accurate? And put it into context. For each minute that somebody with a cardiac arrest is not treated with CPR and then early defibrillation, reduces their chances of survival by just over 10%. You cannot wait for the ambulance service to turn up, even in the centre of London. You have not got the time. Minutes, indeed seconds, count. So it's vitally important that somebody, when you phone up for your ambulance, that somebody knows and is able to tell you where the closest one of these is, and that information should be reliable for you. And why is that important? Our survival rate in the UK from out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is fractionally under 10%. Other countries in the world are about 25% or even slightly better than that. And we know why that's the case. People doing CPR immediately and people going and getting one of these. You've got to know where they are and you've got to be prepared to use it. And again, just to put some figures on this, if we could improve survival rates for the 30,000 people in the UK who have cardiac arrests each year up to 25%, that's between 4,500 and 5,000 lives that will be saved each and every year. So, we're proud to be working in partnership with Microsoft and other organisations as well on a thing called the Circuit, the National Defibrillator Network. This is designed to bring together all of that information from all of the defibrillators that have been sold into the United Kingdom. We're doing this in partnership with a range of organisations. You can clearly see Microsoft there and New Signature. We need to make sure it's got clinical buy-in as well, so we're working with the Resuscitation Council in the UK, who are the ones that set the clinical standards for resuscitation both inside and outside hospital. And most importantly, we have to work with the ambulance services, the ambulance boards and trusts right across the UK. I'm delighted to say that we're already live in 2 ambulance services. First of all, the West Midlands, and then secondly in Scotland, the pioneers, if you like, of this process, and things are going well so far. We hope that the Welsh Ambulance Service will be the next in line coming on board in the next few weeks or so, and we will be conducting a fairly large marketing campaign then to locate each and every one of these, if we can possibly do it, and get it registered on the circuit. This is a really, really exciting concept, but it's not just exciting because of the lives it will save here. It's also a really exciting, cutting-edge, life-saving use of technology developed in partnership, applied in practice. It is a world first. I've always wanted to be a TV producer. Not a lot of people know that. So I've always wanted to say what I'm about to say now. Run VT.
I've been feeling fine. I'd actually been exercising. I just felt a kind of whoosh sound in my head and then complete nothing after that. People I didn't know came to my aid. They started immediately with CPR.
I need an ambulance.
Right, okay. What's the address, please?
Brightly Hill Waterfront.
Okay, that's fine. So someone can go and get the defibrillator. I can tell you exactly where that is. That's on you.
Another person went to get the defibrillator.
Analyzing. Don't touch patient. Press flashing shock button.
They speedily followed the instructions, shocked me, and no response. they shot me a second time, and the pulse came back, and I was suddenly back alive.
All received and en route, and we'll give you an early update as soon as we arrive.
West Midlands Ambulance Service responds to about 1.3 million 999 calls each year, of which about 34,000 are cardiac arrest, but only about 2,000 of those are attended by a public access defibrillator. We know that for patients in cardiac arrest, early defibrillation is a major determining factor in saving that patient's life, and so it is vital that we know where those defibrillators are so that they can help and save as many lives as possible.
The British Heart Foundation is working with the ambulance services in the UK to develop the circuit, the National Defibrillator Network. It's inviting everyone who's responsible for looking after a defibrillator to register it so the ambulance service has accurate, up-to-date data that helps them to improve the survival rate of the victim.
I feel very honoured to be here, and crucial was the defibrillator. That's why I'm here. I am here because of a defibrillator, and that's CPR.
Hi, I'm here with Nick from Microsoft Research and Robin, who's a teacher who's working with us on CodeJumper. CodeJumper is a tool that teaches programming to anyone with visual impairment, blindness, or low sight. So Nick and Robin, you want to tell us a little bit about CodeJumper?
Absolutely. CodeJumper is the physical programming language that we created to teach children ages 7 through 11 the basis of programming and computational thinking. And the idea is that children can use these physical pods, connect them together in lots of different ways, manipulate the adults to create programs. And when you run those programs, you hear some sound, whether it's musical notes or a story that gets played out.
That's fantastic. And as a teacher, Robin, what do you make of this?
I think CodeJumper is fantastic. What's really great, it allows my students to participate fully in the experience because it's not only visual, but we have auditory as well as a hands-on experience. Many of the programs that are out there for beginning coding are highly visual, and for students who are blind visually impaired, they can't get a full experience. And so with CodeJumper, they can really engage because they have the opportunity to just be fully with their peers.
That's fantastic. So shall we program?
Let's do it. Let's start with a simple program just to read out a sequence of numbers. So I'm going to take a play command pod that just reads out a number. I'm going to connect that
to a larger pod,
followed by a second one.
2 small pods.
Now we've got a sequence of 2. If I hit play, we'll hear
perhaps the larger pod.
2. That's great. So can we now sort of do other data structures? Let's just do a loop or something?
Yeah, sure. Let's say it. So rather than just playing through the individual notes, what we could do is let's take this one, just one, and then we'll put it inside of a loop.
Another small pod.
So this one will happen a lot of times. Now I connect that
to the larger pod.
And then I need to add a statement to say every time that you go through a loop, go up by 1, because once you count up,
attaches a small piece.
And then let me just make sure that.
And can change the variable too?
Yeah, we can change the variable to start from 1 or whatever number we want, and then...
So our sequence had 2 commands. So with the loop pod, we turn the dial to determine how many times it loops around. So that was 2, so I'm going to turn it to 2.
A yellow dial.
2. Oh, that's awesome.
Cool. So now if I do it, we see...
Presses the larger pod.
2.
And we could turn it to make 3 for any number of times that we want.
Okay, that's fantastic. What else can we do?
Okay, so this is cool. We can take the exact same program that we just wrote, but rather than using numbers, let's use musical notes instead. So I'm going to plug it in here.
Connects to a different jack on the larger pod.
I'm going to hit play.
Oh, so it's not counting, it's playing music now.
It's playing music, 2 notes, one higher than the next.
What are the goals for this project?
Through our partnership with the American Printing House for the Blind, we're hoping to get CodeJumper into the hands of the children that can really benefit from it. 75% of people who are blind or have low vision are unemployed, and an even greater number is underemployed. So we're hoping that with tools like CodeJumper that can teach the basics of coding at an early age, we might be able to change that number in the future.
really is that I can attitude from the very beginning, because we want the kids to get coding in their hands when they're young. And when the students go through the CodeJumper curriculum, they then have the confidence to move on to text-based coding and, who knows, maybe a career in computer science down the road.
That's wonderful. And where can people go to learn more about this?
To learn more about CodeJumper, you go to codejumper.com, and all the information you need is right there.
Thank you so much, Robin and Nick. It's fantastic to see this all come to life, and I know this is going to be not only fantastic for anyone with low sight or blindness, but everyone who wants to be able to learn with physical input and yet have computational thinking.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They shake hands. Microsoft.
Please welcome Jenny Leigh Flurry.
How are you? I can't hear you, but it's great. I'm so thrilled to be here today. Who was here last year? Give me a show of hands. A few of you. Last year I had a different jacket. But more importantly, I was really thrilled to stand on this stage and talk about something really important. Talk about the power of accessibility. I have the incredible remit at Microsoft to drive a culture of sustainable accessibility, really leaning into the talent of people with disabilities, of which there are over 1 billion in the world, 1 billion being a really big number, and really work with Microsoft to create not just technology, but be a role model employer ourselves, and to really lean into the possibility. And last year I stood on this stage with a challenge. My challenge was, let's change the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate for people with disabilities being double that of people without. And I think that's wrong, like criminally wrong. And I will say that in the last year, there's been an amazing amount of progress. One thing that came out from Accenture was a new research study that looked into 45 companies that, like Microsoft, have been investing in disability inclusion and really harnessing the talent of people with disabilities, which you need to do if you're going to create fully inclusive and accessible products. Whether those are digitally accessible, websites, products that you produce, whatever they are, or physically accessible, which you might know as ramps, but there's a lot more beside it. Now, this research study showed a ton of beauty. It showed that companies that invest in disability inclusion actually have 28% higher revenue, double that net income, and 30% better performance. It's compelling. And what's really humbling is that since last year, so many UK businesses have been engaged with us in amazing conversations of best practice sharing to figure out how we can change that unemployment rate. And not just UK businesses, but partners. And I had some great conversations with some in very dark rooms. It was very hard for a person who's beautifully but deceptively deaf to hear, so I apologize if I missed any or misquote here. But it was just incredible to hear some of our partners in some of the booths out there who are donating to charity when you come up to them, to disability charities. The power of what's been happening is just utterly amazing. And I will say we've also seen that in approaches of events like today. Some of you will know of accessibility. If you don't, it is right next to spell check. And I want you to be using this. And the one thing that they set for this conference was to make sure that every single session, every single PowerPoint, because we like PowerPoint, was actually checked through Accessibility Checker before it was used. And so every session here should be accessible. And I have to say just an enormous thank you. But very quickly moving on, there's more to do. Because that unemployment rate has not materially shifted. In fact, it's not materially shifted in 30 years. And did I really expect it to materially shift after 1 year? Maybe not. But I do believe that with the power of our partnership, we really can. And so I want to give three gorgeous things that we can do to help move this forward. The first one comes from a study, actually, that comes back and dates back to 2003, that said that 57% of us could actually benefit from accessibility features. And we know this to be true with the demographics. 1 in 5 of us has a disability, and it is correlated with age. If you're not in my cool gang, you are coming my way. Sorry. I went out and polled some of the amazing leaders that we have with disabilities in Microsoft and asked them what were the features that they wanted people to know about in their companies or as individuals themselves. And I want to give you a quick schnizzle of some of those that they suggested. One is a new feature in Windows 10, and it's really cool. And this came from Angela Mills, who's one of our most senior engineering leaders in Xbox, and she's legally blind. And what we did is take her feedback and many others to create larger pointers. Now, that may seem like a really small deal, but it's actually a really big deal. One, I get a pink pointer. Because accessibility is not just for cool people with disabilities. We all like pink pointers. But two, by making it larger, you make that whole environment more inclusive. Makes it easier to access and see things. There are nearly 400,000 users of this today, but there are 900 million users of Windows 10. Another was Immersive Reader, and Immersive Reader is targeted for folks with dyslexia. It's actually embedded into Word and our browser. And Donna Zarka, the leader of our Insiders community, who's also a person with dyslexia, uses this every day to help her. Now, the coolest thing that you need to know is not only does this improve reading rates by 10%, but there's an API. You could be putting this into your products. And the 16 million monthly average users that are using this today could be hundreds of millions. There's also websites. Who's got a website here? Microsoft has a couple of them. And I think the tooling that there is to check accessibility of websites, because there is a really cool principle when it comes to accessibility. If you don't know if it's accessible, it's not. And what we did was take our internal tooling and we put it on GitHub. And these are tools that we've been using to help drive accessibility of our own websites. And you can see it rolling through our website here. And you can see that as it beautifully goes through the website, and you hit tab, it goes through the order in the right way. And what that means is that somebody who's blind, low vision, or is with mobility is able to get through that website in a quick, easy, efficient, and gorgeous way. I know there are so many people that could benefit from these tools, and they're freely available on GitHub. And the last one that I want to highlight is actually from Sweather. Sweather you may recognize if you've seen any of the Microsoft I can say that. Let me try that again. AI. It's an important word. I've heard it a couple of times over the last couple of days. Get me teeth in. Sweather is a deaf engineer. She's a phenomenal force of nature. And she came up with a brilliant couple of ideas. One, could we get captioning into Teams? Yes, we can. It's all AI provided. I got it. And also, could we blur the background? Now, I don't think she'd seen the BBC video interview of the kids in the background when she came up with this idea. She came up with it because she's a lip reader. And she wanted to be able to minimize distractions. But by blurring the screen, she's able to focus entirely on this and the environment around her. This is also something that is freely available and to be used today. And I wanted to cornerstone this by talking about one beautiful product. I was in the London store earlier this week, which is gorgeous in Oxford Circus. And I went in the gaming area. And I don't profess to be a gamer, but I do have 4 kids. And 2 of them are boys, and I have a 12-year-old that is, well, she's got aspirations to be a gamer. And I needed to understand the games that were available to her. And I also wanted to see everything that they had to do with inclusion and accessibility in the store. And what made me so proud was to see the Xbox Adaptive Controller right there, with the ability to have immersive gaming experiences where someone can wheel in and play games just like anyone and everyone else. And I also walked away with a personal experience of, well, I got to improve my skills in a game called Overcooked. I'm never going to be a gamer, I think was my overall takeaway. This product blown our minds. And we did produce an ad for this product earlier this year, and I think if there's one claim to fame that we have, is that that ad, which told the story of an 8-year-old called Owen, produced a tweet from Cher that said this was the winning ad of the Super Bowl, which is a football game apparently that happens in the States once a year. All of these products and more are available to you today. That accessibility checker is an incredible force that is now running in the background in Office, across all of Office. And you can make anything that you produce accessible. There are 1 million users of Accessibility Checker, but 180 million users of Office. That means that there are 179 million people using Office every day that may be sending non-inclusive material out, that may not know that there's a game controller, that may not know that you could just switch on captioning and make it personal to you. You may not know about this in your own companies, and you may have individuals, because the nature of disability is that over 70% of it is invisible, that may need these features but aren't aware of them. So my first ask is to help me to get the word out about them, to use them, to give us feedback, to change those numbers, so I can stand here and say it's not 1 million users, which is awesome, by the way. We like millions as much as we like billions. But it's 179 million. My second is to really think about how you are driving inclusion within your company, something that is near and dear to my own heart. It's actually one of the biggest areas that we focus on, whether it's hiring talent with autism or building a pipeline of talent, particularly blind developers and more, that can help us to build inclusive and accessible products, because if you don't have that, you're going to struggle. But I will say there are so many companies here that are beginning to drive this as aggressively as we are, and in places more. And there's one company that I think is a guiding light for us. And I have to share, I came over in 2012 for the London Paralympics. I missed the Olympics, boring. Came to the Paralympics. And 11 members of my family spent 2 weeks at the Paralympic Games, going to all of the different games, enjoying every single athlete, absolutely going for it, in whichever forum. And then going home at the end of the day, putting the kids to bed, and then watching a program called The Last Leg. Anyone heard of it? An amazing comedy program that is led by a person with a disability that talks about disability. And one of the biggest changes for me was watching the coverage. And there's one quote that came up: watching the Paralympics, you realize what an utterly stupid term disabled is. And Simon Pegg. The company that did all of the coverage was Channel 4. And I want to show you a quick video.
A high-end audio recording booth. Corrie Brown.
When I joined Channel 4 in 2001, nobody was really talking about disability at all. And so I didn't talk about disability because obviously, you know, you don't want to be judged and potentially devalued on the basis of something that some people might see as making you less.
Footage of London 2012 Paralympics.
But I think when things really started to change for me and for the business was probably in the lead up to the Paralympics in 2012, because Channel 4 really put disability on the map in all kinds of ways. And since then we've done a lot of work internally to kind of match what our perception was externally, hence a lot of the work that we're now doing with Microsoft. But it is brilliant to see how much work and time has gone into them developing things like Narrator and Magnify, which are obviously the things that I use.
Corrie announcing on Channel 4.
But there's a whole suite of amazing tools now within the whole Microsoft offer, you know, for people who have dyslexia, for people who are colourblind, you know, I could go on, but it's just a whole amazing wealth of new opportunity. I just think is amazing.
Microsoft logo.
It gives me great pleasure to ask Corrie Brown to join me on the stage. We did rehearse.
We did.
You can't tell. So welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much.
So we saw you in your role there and very much as chair of 4 Purple, which is the disability group at Channel 4. But could you give us a sense of what you do in your day job? What is your actual job at Channel 4?
So my title is I'm a continuity announcer. And, well, essentially I get to say things like, expect strong language and full frontal nudity now on Channel 4.
Okay, so we brought the tone down to our level. And how long have you been there?
So I've been at Channel 4 for 19 years. I joined in 2001.
Which is incredible. And I guess I saw this visible thing at the 2012. My whole family did. There was a picture of my kid up on there. It was very much a mini-me. But all of us were just like glued to Channel 4 screen. What was going on at Channel 4? What journey have you been on with disability?
I think for us it was such a time of absolute seismic change. When I started, 2001, nobody talked about disability. By 2012, the lead up to 2012, most of the business was having to come into contact with people who have disabilities. They had to talk about disability. And suddenly I found myself feeling almost a sense of responsibility that actually as one of very few people with a lived experience of disability, that maybe it was time to sort of stick my head above the parapet and actually be a bit more adversarial. And so once you popped the cork, there was no stopping me. And I think, you know, since then we've made massive inroads, but certainly 2012 was a totally pivotal moment for us.
And how do you feel, you mentioned your own personal journey, you've been there a long time, it sounds as though there's been a migration there. What's been the journey when it comes to the Channel 4 itself and how you're including people with disabilities?
So when I started, didn't know a thing about access to work. I'd been there for 9 years before I was even aware of access to work. Since 2012, we've done a lot of work to kind of match internally what I think our public perception was externally. And so we've done a raft of amazing things have happened. We had a disability workplace specialist came in to work with us for a number of years, the amazing Graham Whippy, some people might know him. And through him we produced a sector guide to employing disabled people, which kind of chimes in with our role as a disability confident leader, so obviously we're influencing the wider industry. We've done a lot of work around recruitment, inclusive recruitment. Now we're at a stage really as a business where we need to embed the best practice. So we know what we should be doing, and in some areas we're doing it really well. But across the piece now around accessibility and disability inclusion, I think there's a recognition that we've enabled staff to have really open and honest conversations and to ask for the support and the adjustments that they need. And now we need to kind of do the wider piece around making sure that all our comms are accessible and yes, the whole embedding still. There's still a lot of work to do, but we're definitely heading in the right direction now.
And you mentioned Access to Work. I should explain that. That's a government program. Actually, both of us have benefited from it. They pay for, when I worked here in the UK, they did provide captioning and hearing aids for me. They provide interpreters for you. They provided services as well. And I do want to come back to one thing you mentioned in the green room backstage, which is there's a lot of data that comes behind disability, but you have a goal for representation in Channel 4.
We do. Channel 4 has made a commitment. We're doubling down on disability. Our target now is 12%, and you have to forgive me, I'm not sure quite on the date, it's either 20 or 2023, but the commitment is that that 12% will exist across the business, but also be represented in the top 100% of, top 100 paid employees. So the top 100 people who are paid the most at Channel 4 by, let's say 2023, because that's probably the date, 12% of that cohort will have a disability, which I think is brilliant, because that's how we really influence change, by having that lived experience in places where you can really influence.
And I think that's amazing. For one, you know your number. You've actually gone from 3.6% up to, you said, around 11 already. Yeah. Which is, one, you know your number, and then that goal line, having it within the top 100 staff is amazing. So I have to ask you about the technology side. You've got Office 365. How are you finding that with Windows having an impact in helping you towards those goals?
I think we're currently at a stage of learning, because we've quite recently rolled out laptops at work, and everybody's getting used to using Windows 10 and Office 365. So as a business, we kind of know that there's a lot under the hood that we need to learn about, and we need to leverage what is actually at our fingertips. So we're working with Microsoft at the moment to understand better what we have available to us. Obviously, for me personally, I'm quite interested in tech generally, and so things like Seeing AI and Narrator and Magnifier I use all the time at home.
Which is amazing. And Seeing AI, if you haven't downloaded it on your Fruity devices, please do. It's one of those amazing apps. It's still the #1 rated app for the blind. So where would you like to see us in the future? If you had a magic wand, what would you like us to create in our partnership?
I think at the moment it's AI that gets me the most excited. At a personal level, it's what comes now beyond the smartphone camera. So where does that camera come in a wearable? Will it be on a pin badge or a brooch, or will it be in glasses? But I think once you can harness the power that's already there in Seeing AI into something that actually is just usable all the time, will just be totally phenomenal. I think for us as a business, things that get me quite excited are, again, around AI, but it's around audio description, and potentially signing as well, because Channel 4 has made really great headway in terms of our provision of access services. And so we currently deliver well above the quotas that Ofcom stipulates for all broadcasters. But it's quite a long-winded process to provide that content with audio description. We'd love to be able to do more of it, and I kind of think somehow it must be possible that AI can play a part in that. So that gets me quite excited.
Definitely things for us to be grokking on. Hey, I just want to say a huge thank you to Corey Brown, and thank you to Channel 4 for leading the way in how to create a public change in societal views on disability, and then really live and breathe those values internally. We're humbled and honored to partner with you.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's in our DNA. If you think about it, it's within, we have a remit to stimulate debate and to challenge perceptions. And so we do that all the time. So then you've got programs like The Last Leg, which literally come out of our core values. And so I hope that we continue to do the amazing work that we are doing.
Game on. Yeah. All right, give it up. Thank you, John. I'll see you.
Oh, thank you.
Pretty amazing, right? And that brings me to my third and last challenge. When I think about the possibilities with accessibility, this is the stuff that's already there, let alone what we could do in the future. She's just thrown down the gauntlet with a few things that we could really do to take the future forward in a new level of empowerment for accessibility. And I want to give you 3 very quick examples of other things that we can and are doing to hopefully blow your minds. Or as Michael Caine, who was on stage, I'd love for us to be blowing the bloody doors off this thing. One is if you think about the physical world, and there's so many ways that we could make it easier, we could make it more powerful. This is one that we've just done in our Redmond campus, actually this week, which is try to make the parking spaces, the disabled parking, more visible. And it's just paint. It's paint. And we're piloting it in partnership with Brawn Ability to see what we can do. And this is Jessica on my team. And I will say the other one that we've just put in, this is a little GIF of her with our new strips to call an elevator, which you can hit with your elbow, with your foot, with your wheelchair. Simple things that you can do to revolutionize the world of physical accessibility. We're also working hard on our hackathons. We go into the hackathon process every year, and I have an ability hack. This year, we didn't expect it to be huge, and we were completely and utterly blown away. 1,900 Microsofties were hacking on disability. 1,900 people. And the grand prize winner was an amazing team across multiple countries that were working, leveraging AI and Azure on epilepsy. There's also companies like MoveIt that are leveraging and building maps in Azure and creating APIs. So if you're thinking about location services as part of your product, you can do that now inclusively and accessibly by just leveraging their toolkits. 3 beautiful examples of what's possible when you put the imagination and the creativity that is absolutely here in this room and in the UK, and you combine that with what's possible for a person with a disability. I'm truly honored and humbled to do the job that I do. Someone asked me yesterday how I make the deaf thing work in a company at a C-level. I'm proud to do that because I work in a company that truly believes in the talent that I bring because I'm worth it. And they truly believe that when you bring diversity, when you bring inclusion into a company, you will create the new and hopefully the mind-blowing and change societal demographics in a way that I don't think anyone else in any other environment could. I'm truly honored to be here, folks. Thank you so much for the time.
Okay, we good. Ian, we good. Okay. What is it that we can do that is unique, that is impactful? We are going to empower every individual to do more and achieve more.
That's what technology really is. It's possibility.
Listen. You have more power at your fingertips than entire generations that came before you. Tomorrow is here today. What will you do? What will you do with it?
So this is an augmented reality device called HoloLens.
Wow. People can really use it to take things to the next level. That's what technology is supposed to do. That can change the world.
Please welcome Mitra Azizirad.
Sounds like the Oscars. Nice music. Good morning. I am thrilled to be here. I want to show you some Microsoft innovation and hopefully inspire you around the opportunities that it creates. As we think about the last 20 to 30 years, software has transformed every industry. And pretty much every company, you've heard it a lot here, has become a software company, and the world runs on software. But all of that is changing, because if software redefined the world, AI is actually redefining software. And that's because it's an entirely new way of creating software. With AI, software can now learn through data and experiences without having to be explicitly programmed. And with AI, software can reason over top of data and look for patterns and make predictions and optimize outcomes. And as you think about AI allowing software to perceive the world around us using speech and text and understanding, it's now that every industry, every company is going to become an AI company. And as we think about our approach to Microsoft AI, it encompasses these three things. It's both the breadth of these three things together as well as the depth within each of them. The first is around meaningful innovation, innovation that matters to you and that we quickly make accessible to you. The second aspect of it is empowering everyone, empowering developers and data scientists to innovate and innovate responsibly. It's also about empowering business leaders to transform their business processes, their relationships with their customers. And it's also about empowering all of us, everyone in this room, to tackle some of society's toughest challenges in focusing on AI for good. And as we think about responsible AI, that critical component where you implement AI in a way that reflects your goals, your intentions, your values, both internally and with your customers, is a vital component of our strategy. And so again, it's the comprehensiveness of these three things together that really is our vision around AI. And so our approach is really predicated on this very ambitious focus around innovation. We started Microsoft Research 27 years ago. Happens to be when I started at the company as well in 1992. And now we have 11 labs across the globe with 1,000 researchers who are shaping the next generation of AI. It may be interesting for you to know that we've published over 22,000 research papers from Microsoft Research since the inception. But in the last several years, we have published 6,000 on AI alone. And that's more than any other company in the world and quadruple the amount of our closest competitor. And why should that matter to you is because it is that level of energy and momentum and work that has led to some really explosive AI breakthroughs over the past couple of years. And so as we think about vision and speech recognition, translation, all of these we were the first to achieve human parity on. And notice that clip in the acceleration as we move forward. But it's not about celebrating those breakthroughs. It's really about making sure that we very quickly surface it through the platform and our products, making it available to developers and to our customers. And the momentum has been pretty tremendous. When we look at the cognitive services, 1.3 million developers are using the largest pre-built and customizable set of cognitive services in the industry. Machine reading, billions and billions of pages have been indexed to extract knowledge beyond traditional search. And 60 languages are available within PowerPoint for live subtitles and translation. And so we talk about human parity a lot, and sometimes that can come across as an esoteric term. So I'd like to give you a taste of what we mean by human parity, and I have parity, and I have a couple of challenges for you. So you saw in 2017 we achieved human parity in speech recognition. It was based on a data set called Switchboard, and that's a very good name because it's based on snippets of phone conversations. Now what I'm going to do is play you a very short clip. You need to listen carefully, see if you can make out what this person is saying. Are you ready?
That's about how old ours is.
Anybody make that out? I saw a lot of eyebrows going up, maybe not. So let me give you a couple of examples. Think about what you heard and which one it sounded like. Pick whatever one you think it is, A, B, or C. I'm going to reveal the answer like Vanna White, and then you'll see what the service transcribed. Ready?
That's about how old ours is.
Now that's what the speech service transcribed. That's better than this human's parody, because when I first heard that, I couldn't make out what it was. But you can imagine how that can be used from a conversational AI perspective, how that's built into sort of customer service bots and things like that. Incredibly important as we talk about human parody. There's a lot of hurdles to go over. Second challenge, we also released text to speech, and we had a human parody in that in Azure using deep learning. What I'm going to do here is play you two sentences. One is a real voice, and one is an artificial voice that was trained using the real voice. And I want you to be able to pick which one is artificial. So listen very closely as I play the first one.
As the name suggests, the original submarines came from Yugoslavia.
Okay, play the second one.
This is easy enough if you have an unfinished attic directly above the bathroom.
Who thinks it's A? Who thinks it's B? A was the artificial one. So most people actually thought it was B. And again, this is coming back to human parody, but it brings up a very important point here, which is the person who said B never said A, never said those words. And so this notion of transparency and guidelines around conversational AI and responsible AI, when a human should be in a loop, how you identify whether you're speaking to a human or not is incredibly important. We released guidelines a year ago around standards and approaches from a conversational AI perspective for exactly those reasons. And as we think about this next part of empowering people, it's showing you and talking more about how that innovation is applied and empowering people to do great things with AI. I've talked to many customers over the past several years about AI, and there is still a huge gap between where customers or where businesses want to be, and understanding that there's a lot of competitive advantage from an AI perspective, but notice that there's only 14% from a deployment angle. And you heard data yesterday for UK organizations, 56% of organizations in the UK are using AI, but 48% of them are still in that experimentation phase. And so what I tend to see a lot is just hundreds of proofs of concepts in environments, a lot of isolated proofs of concepts, and still a lot of tentativeness around AI. And so our goal really around this approach to Microsoft AI is to help you close that gap. But what I see lacking is that there's very often not a comprehensive end-to-end strategy in the customer's organization that incorporates every single role, every single function as a part of making AI real. And what happens is what you often see some resistance to change, or people aren't necessarily eager to volunteer their business process to be the first one that's transformed. And so we really feel it's important that every organization realizes the full benefits of AI when there's synergy and complementary functions across every kind of role in the organization, whether it's the technical units, the business units, or just everyday employees that are just using and functioning using AI every day. And so when we think about Microsoft Azure and developers and data scientists be able to create AI, when you think about the business users and really optimizing for time to value, whether that's using sort of prepackaged SaaS AI-infused experiences like sales, marketing, customer service, or whether it's actually democratizing the creation and consumption of AI by business users using the Power Platform. And there's a tool called AI Builder, which brings the creation of AI to every business user. And so there's a complementary sort of synergy as you go through this. And then with Microsoft 365, really providing these user-friendly ways, like I talked about PowerPoint and translation, but very user-friendly ways to democratize access to the AI innovation that's available. What I want to show you next, and I'm going to invite David Carmona, who is the general manager for Microsoft AI on my team, is I want to show you what that full spectrum means, all the way from technical users to business users to everyday users. David?
Can you hear me well? Perfect. Thank you. So as Mitra was mentioning before, our goal is to bring all of that innovation to every role in your organization so you can truly enable an enterprise-wide transformation with AI. So how do we do that? We do that in two different ways. First, we infuse all of that AI innovation into the everyday products that you are currently using, from Office all the way to Visual Studio and everything in between. And the second thing that we do is that, as Mitra mentioned, we are empowering every role to create and consume AI so they can target net new scenarios. So let me show you an example of the first approach, right? So what I'm going to show you now is a feature. There you go. It's a new feature that we're bringing to PowerPoint. It's called Presenter Coach. And it's using several of those breakthroughs that Mitra was showing before to help you be a better presenter. So you just need to click here and rehearse in front of PowerPoint. It will listen to your rehearsal, and it will give you tips and a full report at the end of how you did it, right? So this is what I did. So what I did was, using Presenter Coach, I went to one of the presentations. This is a presentation that I did. This was, I think, Inspire in summer. So this is how I did. So this is the report of my real presentation there. This is the first demo. I did 3 demos in that session. So in the first demo, you can see that this report will tell you things like your pace, which is green, but you can see that in the timeline, I went too fast in some moments, right? It will give you hints on your narration. So for example, if you are reading the slides directly, that is like a bad thing to do, so it will tell you that. It will give you hints like considering, avoiding non-inclusive language, of course, and hints like those. And then in my case, you can see that I say basically a lot. And that's something that I shouldn't do, so it is telling me that, right? So those are like filler words that I shouldn't do. Guilty, I do that. So this is the first demo. The second demo, same thing, a little bit faster. Again, not bad the narration, but you can see a pattern here. I kept saying, basically, so I have to work on that. And this is the third demo. I went way out of time. That will happen to me today. You will see that. So I turned red in the pace. Still, I kept like finding the time to say basically, right? So you see what is going on here. So you're going to hear basically a lot of times today. So at least I want to make it fun. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Presenter Coach. I'm going to run Presenter Coach, and I want to keep it running for the rest of the demo. So every time that I say basically, I will hit like a hint, and I will get like, I will be ashamed in front of you at the end of it, because you will see all the times that I say basically. You can make it fun. I don't know, if you have something to drink, you can drink a shot or something every time that I say basically. But I'm going to try to avoid it. So there you go. So from now on, let's click it again. From now on, I cannot say the big word, okay? So I'm going to minimize this. The thing will still be running. So PowerPoint will keep listening to me. But I'm going to continue, because the second thing, no pressure here. The second thing that I was mentioning is how we want to empower every role with AI, from technical users to business users to everyday users. So let me start. I'm going to use a scenario for this, which is a city council, right? And the first thing that I'm going to show is the website for that city council. So imagine that I'm here in this website, and I want to remodel my kitchen, right? So what I could do here is going and trying to find, the right form, the right permit, the right process, etc. Or in this case, I can just go to the digital agent that I have in here. Sorry, this time out. Give me a second. So I'm going to get to an agent here. There you go. I'm going to just write, I want to remodel my kitchen. There you go. So with that, the bot is going to ask me a couple of questions. So is this your primary residence? Let's say yes. I think it's going to ask any structural work or something like that. I think I'm having some problems with the internet here. Come on. Sending. It's a long thing, yes, to be sent in. Fail, retry, okay. Let me refresh it one more time. If it doesn't work, then I will keep moving. And here again, I still want to remodel my kitchen. There you go. Yes, primary residence, I still live there. And yeah, no structural work. Looks like it's working now. So what it's going to do now is going to find the right form for me, and it's going to open it directly on the website on the right? And because I'm authenticated, it will fill already a lot of information for me, but there's some information missing, so let's keep just saying, answer a couple of questions in here, yeah, whatever. No plumbing work required. And as I do that, the bot will continue to help me. So in this case, it realized that I left this field blank, and it's telling me, hey, do you need any help with that? And I'm going to say, so it's asking for the value. So let's say, I don't know the value yet. So you can see the pattern here is helping me to fill the form, right? So I can say, so it's saying, hey, you can just use an estimate. So let's say that I'm building a $1 million kitchen here. And I'm done, right? So the experience in this case is like helping you, like an employee of the city council will do, right? This was an experience that was built with Azure by the technical users, right? But we say that the next step for that is not only empowering that technical department to create these experiences, but also your business units, right? So for that, I'm going to switch to another department, in this case, the transit department. So this transit department, they have a phone number that you can call, and you can ask for anything, right? So this is a real phone call that I'm doing right now.
Hi, I'm the Contoso City Transit Bot. I can assist you with buses, trains, and traffic information, or say talk to an agent to talk to a customer agent. How may I assist you today?
When is my bus leaving?
I can help with that. Please tell me your bus line number.
110.
Please tell me your stop.
Main Street.
Your next bus leaves in 5 minutes, and the next one in 20 minutes. Is there anything else I can help you with?
There you go. So the good news about bots is that you can just hang up on them. You don't need to be polite or anything. So we can shorten this demo a little bit. So how did we build this experience? So again, this is a dialogue that I have in conversational AI, but in this case, instead of using the Azure services, I empower my business units to build this by themselves. So in this case, let me show you what I use for that. This is Dynamic 365 Virtual Agent, and it is able to enable non-technical users to create that experience, right? And you do that, imagine that I'm a customer service manager, right? You do that by creating topics. So in this case, I can see a lot of topics that this agent can handle, but this is the one that I just triggered, the bus schedule. So let me open that one. And now the experience that you're going to see is a very visual experience that any business user can create. So it will have things like, for example, defining what are the trigger phrases that will trigger that dialogue, right? And they don't have to be exact, they just need to be similar. You have things like what the bot is going to say, and taking the input from the user, and then depending on that, doing different things. In this case, I can even call, so you can see here that I'm making a service call, because this is fully integrated with Microsoft Flow, so you can call third-party services. All of that without any technical knowledge. So that was about business units. But what about every employee? That was the next frontier that Mitra was also mentioning. Let me show you one more thing. So if I go back in here, this is another application. In this case, is the dashboard for an employee in the city council. This is also powered by conversational AI, but in this case, it's integrated with Power BI. So this that you see here is a Power BI report. And what I did in this Power BI report is to use AI to get more insights into what is happening in my city. For example, I use AI in here, the anomaly detection service, to understand that there's a delay in my transit system. I use in here sentiment analysis to understand that there's a drop in the sentiment from my social media. And in here, I was able to apply another service to extract the keywords from those complaints, and I can see late, train, delay, so there's a problem here with my transit system. I can even see the key influencers. So what is causing that? Another AI feature that is part of PowerPoint, Power BI, that will tell you, for example, that the main reason for it, the main correlation there is that the batteries are failing. So I was able to identify that I had a problem in my city all the way to what that problem is. All of that by using AI. So I know what you're wondering. How did it? I think I didn't say it any time, right? Did I say the big word? No. Oh my God, I'm going to pass this test. Let me go here. So I'm going to finish this presentation, the rehearsal here. There you go. Oh, well, you know, I have some problems that I still need to solve here. Said a couple of, you know. Okay, but I didn't say the big word, so that's progress, right? So next year, I will try to avoid these words, and I will now get it out of my system. Basically. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we've talked to you a bit here about technology, but AI transformation extends beyond technology. And implementing an AI transformation requires this comprehensive strategy that we're talking about, which is not only the synergies across all of the different kinds of users that we just talked about, but it also incorporates other aspects like culture. When we talk to customers, very often the issues that they're having with the AI transformation has to do with the cultural aspects within the organization. And so the leadership capabilities, the leadership behaviors that really incorporate and instill an AI-ready culture are incredibly important from an AI transformation perspective. And there was an AI Pulse survey that showed that the #1 place that leaders wanted to spend more time from an AI transformation perspective was in inspiring and motivating their employees. It's a very important component of an AI transformation. And then how to implement AI responsibly is another aspect that has to be built in from the get-go and foundationally. And we look at sort of this marriage of culture and technology to have this multiplying effect within the organization. And that's precisely why we created AI Business School. And each one of those boxes is a module in AI Business School. In fact, my team created it, and it was actually David's team that created AI Business School. And we did that because we wanted to bring all of those components together. We wanted to make sure that we were providing a free online masterclass series that helped everybody in terms of these concepts from an AI perspective, because the more knowledge there is, the better everybody is from an AI perspective in order to lead with confidence. As I said, we are the first and only cloud vendor to provide this. We have a lot of senior execs and assets that you can see here, industry case studies, videos, practical guides, industry experts, and also we share where we haven't gotten it right at Microsoft first time out of the gate, and we want to share those learnings with you, learn from our mistakes. And so this is an area where we provide a lot of different kinds of tools and frameworks and assets for you. We launched this in mid-March, and we've already had 500,000 people go through it from over 200 countries with a 4.8 out of 5 satisfaction rate. So I highly recommend, if you haven't gone through AI Business School, that you check it out. We've got the link right there for you. And I'm also excited to announce that we have added an education learning path. So this is our 6th learning path. This was highly demanded in terms of how AI can help to transform classrooms, learning processes, and operations. And we teamed up with educational experts to provide that within AI School. For government leaders, we added a government learning path in May. And there are very specific things from a government and public sector perspective around governance that we have added within that track. And we have a greatly expanded responsible AI module. And so things that we're providing in there, for example, are a very detailed view of Microsoft's sort of design principles around engineering, sharing that very openly with you, the tooling to help you develop responsible AI. And there's industry experts from TD Bank and from EY and some other areas that have provided new content in terms of their journey from an AI transformation perspective and responsible AI. For organizations in the UK, we are also providing AI Business School will be in our flagship store here, the Microsoft Store, on the 4th floor, which is the Enterprise Experience floor. And there are experts there that can talk to you and help you with your AI strategy. So I encourage you to go there and check it out. We also have our expo booth here in the skilling group. You can either sign up or talk to the folks there about getting more detail on this as well. And so we've talked about the meaningful innovation. We've talked about empowering everybody within the organization and moving into responsible AI. This is now in terms of how we are empowering everybody to look at not only the approach of it within your organization, but the impact of AI on a society perspective. And when you think about every industry, there is no industry that's immune from issues around responsible AI. If you think about financial services and bias, sure, AI allows you to give loans faster, but who are the loans going to? And what kind of models and what kind of applications are being spitted out through those models? Who are those loans going to? Are you able to comply with the strict regulatory practices from a finance perspective? When you think about retail, transparency in retail is incredibly important. Obviously, there's a lot that AI can provide you from a customer and consumer insight perspective, but how is that information being used? Why are certain ads popping up for me as a consumer? So the transparency around that and how the data is being used is an incredibly important component. When we think about manufacturing, safety and reliability, and ensuring that the humans in the manufacturing environment and the operations environment are being also kept safe, and the people interacting with the AI systems. And from a privacy and healthcare perspective, privacy is a fundamental human right. And that's something that we take very seriously as well from the way that we look at the different industries. And a lot of the discussions that I have with folks just kind of thinking through this is, what's the process to start putting my responsible AI sort of strategy in place? And it starts with having a set of principles, again, that reflect what the core values are, what your intentions and your goals are, and they really need to be very aligned with your culture. So it's a very deep sort of process to go through. Then putting those principles into practice is a whole different set of evolution within the process. And then the tooling is as important as those practices in terms of making sure there are the teeth and the ways of monitoring and understanding if it's going in the way that you've expected. And so when we look at it from a Microsoft perspective, in 2016, Satya put forward these 6 principles: fairness, reliability, transparency, for anybody in the company who is building, applying, using anything to do from an AI perspective. And so that is the foundation of how we move forward into our practices. One of the things I'm continually surprised by, and I don't know why I'm still surprised by it, but it's the amount of time that's spent and thinking about sort of an ML Ops foundation, a practice that allows you to look at AI development all the way from design to development to the training and to the deployment and then the monitoring of that full AI lifecycle. There's just the least amount of time that I see in any of the conversations I have with organizations, the least amount of time spent is on those aspects. That monitoring piece of it, incredibly important from a governance perspective, but every step I talked about there, the design, the development, responsible AI has to be infused into every single one of those steps. And so the first thing that's important is to make sure that there is an ML Ops solution and life cycle that's put into the environment and infused in every single step. And then as you think about building on top of that, we at Microsoft have the Ether community committee, that's the AI and ethics and research and engineering, that works cross company with different groups, whether it's sales or engineering, a lot of different functions, to look at sort of the recommendations and the challenges of AI as we're implementing it internally or with customers, and make recommendations around the best way to do that. But it isn't the responsibility of any one company to build trusted AI. It really is an industry issue, and it's on all of our shoulders. And to that end, we co-founded Partnership in AI with other technology companies, NGOs, and universities to look at the ethical implications and study the ethical challenges of AI in society. And I mentioned earlier around the conversational AI guidelines and standards. We put a lot of guidelines and standards out for ourselves, and we share those very broadly with you and with the entire community, whether it's the 20 years of experience that we have around the human-centered design for AI, which we put guidelines out about that, or the conversational AI that I talked to you about, or transparency notes around facial recognition. These are all things that we make available to you as well. And a lot of those things available in AI Business School. And from a tooling perspective, continuing to build trust into the practices that you're implementing. So when you think about model transparency and explainability, some of the data they were talking about yesterday is a lot of leaders not knowing why the model is spitting out certain actions to do. It's super important to be able to have that explainability, that transparency, and using things like Interpret ML or the homomorphic encryption from a privacy perspective. We just yesterday announced a partnership with Harvard on differential privacy, where we're working with them to provide a platform that helps to ensure privacy for very large data sets. And that's incredibly important from a healthcare perspective, any industry, but incredibly important from a healthcare perspective, where just putting anonymous labels doesn't really help, because with a lot of different aspects, you can reconstruct who the owner of the data was. And so differential privacy is an incredibly important component of this. And so once again, I want to show some of this in action for you. So I'm going to invite David back out to show you some of the tools.
Thank you. Hello again. I'm not going to use the PowerPoint presenter coach this time. No way. I don't want to be ashamed anymore by PowerPoint. So in this case, what I want to show you is some of those tools that Mitra was mentioning before. So tools that you can use to create AI that can be trusted by your customers. So let me show you that in what it may seem like an innocent scenario, a retail website. This retail website is using some of those tools that Mitra was mentioning before. For example, it allows to get recommendations for items that are just for you, specific for your user. So you can see that in every item, I have a label of why this. And I'm sure that you had that experience before. You see an ad and you have no idea or why you are seeing that ad that is fitting exactly what you were looking for, right? In this case, we are using a technology developed in Microsoft Research called EBM. And this technology, if I click here, it allows you to open the black box of an ML model. It could be from a black box model to even a deep learning model, and understand why the model has ended with a specific decision. In this case, I can see that I'm seeing this product because of an attribute, marital status, husband. Super creepy, right? So from here, what I can do is either telling the system, hey, don't use that anymore, or change my profile. So that is one thing. The other thing in this website is that it's using also, it has like strong standards for privacy. So one of the other features that I have is looking for a similar item. So I can upload a picture and it will search for similar items to that one. So usually when you do that, you have to send a plain image. Right? So if it's your face, you are sending your face to this website. So in this case, what I'm using is a technology called homomorphic encryption. And that technology, what it will do, if I click here, for example, some shoes, what it's doing is encrypting this image in the client side. It's sending an encrypted version to the server. But even by doing that, the system, scripting, this is taking too long, another timeout here. So what it's going to do eventually, let me refresh this. I'm getting a lot of timeouts today. And it's not even, okay, some issues today. Let's try again, one more time. Look for similar. Upload image. Some shoes. Okay, so encrypting the image is sending the image to the server, but even if the image is encrypted, the server will be able to apply an AI model on top of it, so I can see the recommendations back. And not gonna, well, we'll go back to this in case it's working. I'm getting some time out here today. So the other thing that I want to show you is the same technology that we saw before, EBM, but in this case for the data scientists. So the data scientist has the same tools, in this case for their development. So this is a Jupyter notebook that the data scientist has created, in this case for creating a model that is estimating the likelihood for a user to buy a particular product. And you can see as I open that model, that black box model, I can see that young people and older people are less likely to buy a particular product. That may be true for young people, because I see here, this is the histogram that I have for my data. I have a lot of data for young people, they are not buying this product. But then old people, I don't have enough data here. So this is not accurate. So I may be jumping into conclusions without enough data. So in this case, it was very innocent, but imagine that is a long application that I'm approving or denying with an AI model. That's something that you cannot do, right? So these were just a few tools that you can use today that are available in Azure to make sure that you create AI that can be trusted by your customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And so lastly, I had talked about how we think about the need for even more innovation, more strategic partnerships around doing good from a society perspective, and really ensuring that as we look at this foundation of trust that we have, that we're really also doing the right kinds of things to make sure that the impact of AI in society is, again, reflective of the intentions, the values that we have. We have our MS AI for Good program, which I know you heard a lot about yesterday, AI for Accessibility, which you just heard about now. Our newest program is AI for Humanitarian Action, which is around helping displaced peoples and refugees and at-risk populations. We also have AI for Cultural Heritage, I should say that's the most recent one, which is around preserving languages. A language dies every 2 weeks when the last speaker of the language passes away, and so preserving languages, historical sites and artifacts is an incredibly important component of our overall AI for Good program. One of my favorite grantees, and we have 300 grantees from 63 countries that have participated in the AI for Good program. One of my favorite ones is Wild Me, which is using AI technology that was actually created to map constellations to actually help with species conservation and to actually map against markings on animals. And so I'd love to show you a video around Wild Me.
There are an estimated 90,000 threatened species across the globe. To understand what puts a species at risk, we need to know where are they born, how many survive, where do they go, how far do they go.
At Wildbook, we are using an algorithm to digitally tag individual animals, much like a human fingerprint. So this is a new whale shark for science.
Yes, and we named it Wilma.
Wilma the whale shark.
Microsoft AI gives us the building blocks to analyze public streams of photos and videos and identify individual animals in an instant. AI can determine location, date of sighting, migration patterns, and even an animal's social group. And an intelligent agent can contact the contents owner and ask for the missing detail. Microsoft's AI for Good initiative gives us the technology to create a comprehensive view of the planet's biodiversity. In the last 10 years, we've identified 10 times more whale sharks than ever recorded in human history. By leveraging citizen scientists together with researchers, we can form conservation policies. Microsoft AI will help us accelerate our work by empowering people to take action. What we get back is, wow, this is amazing.
So our vision for Microsoft AI is one of meaningful innovation, empowering people with people at the center, and the responsible use of AI, both from a business and from a society perspective. I hope we've inspired you with some of the opportunities that you can think through with what we showed you today. And I am now pleased to introduce